All right, I'm here on the Every Thought Matters podcast with my friend Leah. Welcome, Leah, to the Every Thought Matters podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Oh, I am so blessed to have you on. And I follow you, you follow me on TikTok, and I've been following your journey on TikTok, and it's great. And one of your biggest things is you've literally recovered from ADHD without meds. Let's just start with wherever you want to start on that journey and tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to this point.
Okay, great. Yeah, so my name is Leah and my TikTok is healingcode333. I love following you on TikTok as well. But so my journey started, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in college. And then became medicated shortly after I was diagnosed. And then I was on medication for over a decade and on and off. And it was a huge struggle. And after a decade on it, it wreaked havoc on my body and mind. It completely destroyed my central nervous system. I had a lot of issues getting off of it, and it ended up being a good thing because it threw me into my dark night of the soul, which I talk about a lot on my page. And but yeah, it just threw me into a huge healing journey once I got off the medication and once I realized the damage that the medications had caused. And then also coming to the realization that I was addicted to the medications. It was a whole mess. And that's why I speak up about ADHD and how scary these medications can be long term, because they really don't tell us about any of this after um, being in doctors' offices and speaking with physicians. It's none of them really truly know the long-term effects of these medications. So that's why I speak up about it. But yeah, in doing this, I was able to heal the majority of my quote unquote ADHD symptoms, or how we perceive ADHD as a collective now. And that's what I mostly talk about on my page.
So how do we perceive ADHD as a collective?
Well, I think that it's very misunderstood. For me personally, I've kind of discovered it's more of a trauma response or a spiritual. Um, a lot of people have a lot of spiritual gifts and they're diagnosed with ADHD and they don't know that because they're trying to suppress a lot of their gifts. They don't understand what's happening internally, and we're not given any tools to deal with that. And so, out of desperation, a lot of us get on medication because we're just trying to live a normal life. Um, so I feel like that's a huge thing. But how we perceive ADHD is as a collective, we think of it as a person who can't focus, can't get their life together, that's constantly scattered, that is never on time, that's constantly having issues with remembering things. It's almost really perceived as a form of dementia. Um,
That
I feel.
that's an amazing perception of that, and I never looked at it that way because I looked at it more as, oh, look, shiny penny, oh, look, squirrel,
Right.
rather than it being forgetful and not being on time. And that's really fascinating to me. So when did you think that you first had it, or did you go to a doctor and they told you you had it?
Yeah, so
Which
I was
way did
diagnosed.
that happen?
Yeah, it was in I wasn't diagnosed until 2004 ish, around then, because I was in college. And but all growing up, I had trouble in school. I mean, when I was diagnosed, you get so much support too when you're diagnosed, especially with how it's so ingrained in society right now. It's like, oh, that makes so much sense why you were the way you were, why your grades were bad. Everyone, once they hear you have a diagnosis, they accept it, you accept it, and you kind of start believing that narrative over and over. And you kind of like step into that instead of working on finding ways to work on it and help with the symptoms. We basically mask with medication. Most of us, a lot of people haven't. There's a lot of people out there that never got on medication, which was very smart. And they deal with it in their own way.
And my business partner told me that I have it, and I'm like, what? I'm 58, and I'm like, what? I don't know, but she has it, but she's not on medication, and she's like, "Oh my God, I can't wait to listen to this podcast because I'm sure you're going to illuminate some things for her as well." But somebody told me that I had it, and I'm like, no, in the 70s, growing up in the 70s, it was just like, okay, this person has trouble focusing. We didn't have all these acronyms. We just
Right.
like, okay, that person was this way. But I want to lean into the spiritual gift side of this because I don't know. I have a sister that's manic and bipolar. And people think that she's got to be medicated. And there's a bit of that to be true because there's a bit of chemistry change in the brain with that. But I also think that's a spiritual gift as well. And I want to know why you think ADHD has some spiritual gifts because honestly, I have spiritual gifts. I'm a tarot reader and I can channel things. And I'm wondering whether or not I don't have ADHD, but I just have the spiritual gifts. I want to know where you came about with that or who taught you that.
Well, I started noticing it myself. And like when I was on medication, I was still very spiritual. I've always been very spiritual, but I didn't understand what was going on with my brain. I did not understand. I was getting downloads, I was getting information, I was having telepathy. I did not know that that's what all these things were. All I could hear is chaos in my mind, and I didn't know how to calm my central nervous system down. And then eventually, over time, it manifests in your body, and you have, brain fog issues, gut issues, and of course a lot of this is diet, which we can, you can work with the diet and everything like that. I worked with everything to get the inflammation in my body down, but my mind was always still going off. And that's when I finally realized, okay, it's these thoughts that I haven't been able to organize. That's the chaos. And no one, interestingly enough, psychologists don't study the voices in people's heads, which I would think would be very important detail. Not for schizophrenia, not for ADHD, not for any sort of mental illness. And unless they've done a study recently, but years ago, I did a deep dive into this, and you can't find any studies. And you would think, especially with all mental illness, that this would be a very important study to do. Because lots of people are hearing and seeing the same things, and we don't this is my personal opinion, we don't realize it. But when you're getting all these things and you're getting all this information, you're more likely to forget things in the 3D, I guess you would call it. You're more likely to, you'll be at the grocery store, you're zoning out, you're doing, the day-to-day stuff, and you're starting to get downloads and information, so you forget certain items that you knew you needed at the time. And that's why you'll get in your car and you go, I came here for this one item and I didn't even come out with it. So it reflects to the physical world as a disorder. But if you start viewing it from a spiritual perspective, I started to write down when things like that happened, what was going on in my mind. And I keep notebooks with me everywhere, because writing it down really helps. It really helps you able to start perceiving what your surroundings, what's going on, what times you're getting this information and things like that. But that's how I perceive it. And I have a sibling who is bipolar too, and I personally believe they are kind of in a different dimension sometimes. That
Whoa.
might be far-fetched, but
That is no, no, Leah, you are speaking my language because I believe that too. I I'm just starting because of TikTok, to be honest with you. I'm starting to see things differently and I've learned and fascinated by 3D and 5D. I have a friend on TikTok that's a quantum jumping coach. Literally, kid you not. Like
Mhm.
she has clients that she teaches how to quantum jump timelines, and all of that. And think here's where I'm going to go because this is my personal opinion, and if people can like me or don't like me, but the nomenclature we use around these things is for lack of a better word, propaganda
Yes.
because it's teaching you that you're sick, so you have to go to the medical system and do X, Y, Z. And I think a lot of this, and you kind of touched on that a little bit, for me personally, is that you call it a disease, and I call it more of a symptom of this. And then that's why I wanted you on this podcast because I wanted to see like it's like a ball of yarn that you're trying to unravel, but there's so many knots in the middle of it that you had to go through. And that's what fascinates me about you, and that's where I think you as a human can help others see ADHD not as a disease or a symptom, but as a way to discovering your true self. Is that kind of okay, right,
Absolutely.
wrong?
No, that's 100%. And I really feel like if we change the paradigm of how we view what ADHD is, more people can step into their true selves instead of having to medicate and trying to fit in with the world around us. There's also like a creative aspect of it. We're really highly creative, and the world is not really built for really highly creative people. You kind of push that away and push that down. And I also believe like suppressing that creativity also can present as symptoms as well, like not having an outlet for your creative side. I think can be really damaging, which is a lot of, public school systems, all of, not getting, I was never put in art classes. I didn't even know I liked to paint, which I love painting, until I was 30 or 29. So I didn't even know. So it's like, if you don't have that, someone in your life that's like cultivating it when you're young, you kind of just don't think about things like that because society has kind of pushed that down. I had a job in sales that I was trying to stay on top of when I was medicated. I was always trying to like fit into this idea of what I thought success was, instead of like feeding into my own gifts and fueling my own energy. I feel like, and I did need medication in order to fit into that world at the time, or the way I perceived it.
That's a wild concept. You needed medication to fit into the narrative of the world that exists outside of your brain. That's very interesting because once you got off of that, you found that you do have creative outlets. Like I found that I was horrible in art class, but yet I studied art in college and I just was fascinated by, for me, it went down to the mindset. But like Jackson Pollock is probably one of my favorite artists. And I thought, wow, what kind of brain, what kind of mindset, what kind of thoughts came to that person to create art? And you peeled that away, gotten rid of the medication, which took you, you said 2 years to really detox from all of that.
Yes, it took me 2 years. I will say, I think because of the duration of time that I was on the medication, that it really just did enough damage. And I didn't know what I was doing. There weren't a lot of resources out there. There was one forum about quitting Adderall, and that was pretty much what I relied on. And everything else was trial and error. So I was changing my diets. I was doing all sorts of things. I actually was doing energy healing courses. I was doing everything, but it had also pushed me into a dark night of the soul. So I don't know if I just was in this state where I was forced to be for 2 years, or if it truly takes 2 years to recover. A lot of people, when they've been on for at least a decade to 15 years, tell me that it took them about the same time, that this
Very
2 year
interesting.
average. But if you've only been on it for 2 or 3 years, it will take you a couple months to a year. So just depending on how high your dosage was.
But the beautiful part of your story is that there is hope.
Yes, there is. I spent every day of those 2 years just hoping that it would end, right? Like that I would find a way out. And every day became another day. And I was like, maybe eventually I surrendered to the fact that I may never feel better, that I may have caused brain damage, because it was that long. You're just going, why am I never, maybe this is it. Maybe this is as good as it's going to get. And I have to be okay with that. And I feel like once I finally did that, and I started to do that about a year in, but then I started to see the healing really happen. So if someone's able to get off the meds and start surrendering immediately, that you're not going to feel well for a long time, but you don't know when it's going to end, then it makes the process, I feel like, a lot easier, because constantly searching for a feeling that you can't find is really scary. And I think it can push a lot of people. I think we're going to see a lot of people going into depression when they start realizing these things and really not being able to find a way out. But they need to know that it does end. And a lot of people go back to the meds because they get to this length of time and they're like, well, I might as well just be on meds because it doesn't get any better, but it does. And I've heard even people on meds for 25 years. It might take them a couple of years like me, but they eventually do heal. So that's the most important thing.
And that message of hope is why I think you're brilliant. But all of this aside, if you were to give me one or two sentences, who is Leah now?
Who am I now? Well, now I am someone who taps into her creativity. I find inspiration in every single day. I tap into love constantly. I'm able to see the beauty in the world again. And I've basically found my way back to my own heart. So, and I feel like I thrive now, even if it's just in the little things and just in the day to day. But finding my art really has helped me heal as well. So,
Yeah, and I truly agree with you. Like my business partner, she says she has ADHD and she's not medicated, but she's incredibly creative. Like I'll pitch something to her and it'll be like this boring thing, and it'll come back and it'll be with pictures and colors and wonderful things. Like, wow, where did you come up with that? How did
yeah.
and and what is your favorite creative outlet? Painting now?
Painting, I kind of like doing the videos too. TikTok has been
Yeah.
a bit of an outlet for me. I bet yes, painting and writing, anything really creative that will get my brain just in that mindset. Because really, we're meditating when we do that, you know. So it kind of calms our nervous system, our central nervous system down when we get in those states of flow. And that's really, I think, essentially what we're looking for is just that. Oh, we're constantly looking at for ways to kind of calm down because we're always just,
Yeah.
you know how it is.
Right, where there's always thoughts coming through, like, even while talking to you, there was another thought, like, out of nowhere, but I teach people that you can meditate while writing.
Yes.
Seriously, it's very easy to do because all you have to do is focus on every letter. Slow down your brain to, you know, Jack and Jill went, and just really slow down to each letter on how you spell it out, no matter what language you were in, and you can actually slow your brain down.
That's interesting. I haven't tried that before. I just know if I write for 5 minutes, then it starts to flow and I can get kind of in that. But I'm gonna try that. The letter, focusing on every letter.
Yeah, print it out, not cursive. I know cursive is probably lost on most people, but print it like J, A, and visualize each letter as you write it, and it'll stop your brain. And it's no different. Okay, I love sports, so I'm going to get a sports metaphor. I don't know how much you know about sports, but it's most the world's greatest athletes, the game that they play, whatever it is, baseball, football, hockey, even you know the other football, which is soccer or whatever, the game slows down for them. It's like it's become a slow motion movie for them. That's kind of a
Mhm.
meditative state. And Jordan hitting that game winning shot in Game 6 against the Utah Jazz. I think it was Utah, or no, it's Cleveland. I think, and in that moment, he is in that meditative zone. So find ways. n- I know a lot of people who have ADHD who cannot figure that out. How, like, oh, I can't meditate. Man, I got all these thoughts. And no, you may not be able to do it that way, but you could do it by writing. You could do it by just throwing paint on a canvas. That's what I started doing. I just start throwing paint on a canvas. Found it was very healing for me.
Yes, and you're right. That yeah, there's definitely different ways to do meditation. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around meditation as well. Like I can never make the thoughts in my head go away. It's never, but I can allow them to kind of flow through and be the observer of the thought. And once I can do that and just observe what's going on in my mind, um, then I'm able to meditate.
Yeah, I probably the favorite meditation I've ever done was with this casting director in LA when I lived out there in the entertainment industry. And it was 55 minutes and it felt like five. It was by far the best meditation session I've ever been in. But she taught us how to ground ourselves to the earth. But then if that thought comes into your head and it doesn't serve you, you just put it into a balloon and let it float off.
Oh, I like that. I've never tried that.
So if it doesn't, and you have to be able, one of the Buddhist tenets is observe your life as if you're in a movie. So
Mhm.
take a second, watch Leah from afar, and then see what comes out of your mouth. And then you watch yourself. Leah said this, Leah said that, Kelly said this, Kelly just said that. And watch yourself, even my hand movements, my hand gestures, all of that. Like that's a protagonist in a movie or a book. Why are they doing that? That's another way to meditate, is just watch yourself.
Yeah, I like that. I do
But
like to become the observer sometimes.
yeah, because as you said, and that's one of my favorite things about you is that you surrender to the fact that those thoughts are going to come. I love that because if you surrender to that, then you're like, because you're not trying to control it. So you're letting it flow, then try and become the observer and then let them float off into the distance if they don't serve you, or write it down. Like figure that out. And the more you do that, the more you practice it, the more you comes in. Because as you said, I want to get to that point. And I know I had this one point in my life where I felt the entire universe inside my soul. And
Mhm.
every day I try to get back to that. And there's a Jim Carrey video about that same kind of process.
Oh,
But
yes.
where I was reading the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and I don't know if you know the Four Agreements. Do you?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Yes.
Great. So I was reading that for the very first time in 2009 or 10 on my friend's couch. She handed it to me, and I'm like, okay. Lay crashed at her place on the couch, started reading it, and it was about 9:13 p.m. the day before my father's birthday, and I felt the entire universe inside my soul when I was reading it. Like I felt almost like rays of light coming into here, my heart, my soul. 'Cause
That's
what most
incredible.
people, I know, and I always want to get back to that. Most people don't know that we have just like the neurological stuff we have in our brain, we have neurons also in our heart,
Yes, we do.
and they fire, and that's what love is. And like I love how you said, well, I go back to find love in everything every day. And is that less of a challenge now, or how is that easier for you now that
Yes.
you're off the beds?
Yeah, yes, I still have bad days, but like I was so separated from source during my dark night of the soul, and it was really, I mean, it was still, it's the most difficult thing I've ever gone through. I didn't want to be here, basically. But once I got my inspiration back, once now it's like I'm so grateful for that, and like so grateful to feel again, that I'm even grateful when I'm mad, or I'm even grateful when I'm angry, because having feelings again is like, I don't know. And it's been 4.5 years since I quit the meds, or over 4.5 years now. But yeah, I feel like it gets easier and easier as time has gone on to like tap back into love. And I just know what that space is, and I'm never going to lose that again. Um, well, hopefully I'll never lose it again. Hopefully no crazy things are going to happen to me next. But from a substance standpoint, I do think that there might be a more hidden agenda that people don't understand. I think in a way they might know that it does damage us in ways that no one can possibly comprehend until they go through it. And I think there's something to that as well. Like maybe they are trying to shut that down. The most highly creative people are able to tap into their heart space pretty easily, and especially since, you're more connected to source, I feel like, when you're tapped in that way. And if everybody was doing that, I mean, the world would look like a totally different place.
Well, yeah, there's two things I want to talk about now because the first one is I don't know if you know the book The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it though.
It's not for me, the first couple chapters basically teach you, he shows you how the neurological responses to thoughts are in your body. But then I'd use it as more of a reference point because there's a little chart in the middle of it that basically shows you if, say, like for instance, one I know, my lower back starts getting really wonky when I have money issues,
Mm-hmm.
and how your neurological responses to those. stimuli in our world affect your body. And obviously, you said that because those meds were actually hurting your central nervous system. And the beauty of it is, and I'm going to go out on a limb, but I believe we can heal ourselves. I really do. I just, I have a story to somebody I one on my podcast. Basically, her dad was diagnosed with, I believe it was colon cancer, and she refused to believe it. And she got her family to refuse to believe it. And within a month, he went back and got the MRI and it was gone.
Wow, that's
And he's,
incredible.
but I talk to myself like they're little, the movie Minions?
Yes.
Right. I love those little characters. So and we have about 1 trillion cells in our body. And I just, like, if something happens and I'm feeling out of alignment, literally, like, say I have circulation issues sometimes in my right foot. So I just talk to them like, all right, what's going on? What can we
Mhm.
do? Right.
Yes,
And,
I do.
and feed them that energy and as you do, love, right? They all have that and they're all tapped into it. So I try to go down that path. So, I think that book would be a nice little reference point for you. For me, it's not a read end to end kind of book, but I think it would be a wonderful thing for you because honestly, you're kind of like this ADHD recovery coach to me.
Yeah. I would like to develop something tangible like that where some people can use it. I don't know if coaching or if just some sort of like guide that would help them. The hardest thing is like, getting people to see that they can't, what you just said is getting them to believe that they can heal themselves because we were so programmed for so long that we need something outside of us to help us or something external to fix a problem. And that is obviously by design, but I feel we absolutely can heal ourselves. I always send messages to my cells too. That's so important. Once I started doing that, like the subtle shift you can feel, and I try to do it every day. Every now and then I'll miss a day, but just sending my cells love or sending health or whatever. Like I just picture them all alive and like turning over.
Yeah, so
Like
do I. I do the same freaking thing. You're the first person I've ever talked to that does that.
yeah, I wonder. I believe. I don't wonder. I know it helps because I feel almost like a shift in me when I do it, especially if I'm feeling low or feeling bad. And sometimes, of course, we need to feel bad or low. I'm not trying to like bypass that ever, but there's so many tools out there, and I think people it's just been lost, and now it's time for everybody to kind of wake up and like step into who they truly are, and that way we can all like thrive and heal ourselves like you said.
I firmly believe that, and I just think it's a wonderful process for us to go through to see how our cells can actually be aligned with our true self, because that's all they want to do is for you to be happy and aligned. But one of the things I like about you is that you're actually allowing yourself to feel, because once you start suppressing feelings, and I'm still learning this and I'm not the best at it, but when you suppress your feelings, that's gonna create some sort of neurological symptomatic response in your body.
Oh, absolutely. And I used to all the time. I was able to control the way I felt with those medications. So if I was having a bad day, I could take medication and would just stuff it away. And of course, we all have trauma too. I'm not negating that that's an issue with ADHD. So, but we've got to feel and heal the trauma. We have to like go through all the steps and actually bring back up all of the stuff and do all the shadow work. And that's how we start healing it. But I don't like it when people think that you have to be constantly positive all the time in order to like receive abundance. I think that's total BS. And I think that causes more resistance for people long term if they're just constantly ignoring this, all of this stuff in the background and, just always thinking positive. You can do that. It's an option, but I don't think it brings in what's truly meant for you. I think it blocks you.
Well, the old saying is, and I know you know this, you can fool anyone you want to, but you could never fool yourself.
Right. That's true.
And it's and let's take that a step further. I just channeled this message, but you can fool yourselves, but they know the true self of what's
Right.
going on with you. So that's why you're gonna have bad days. You accept that. And what this shows me from my perspective, and it's why I'm so freaking happy to have you on my podcast, is that you're allowing yourself and you're telling people that it's okay to feel bad, that you're gonna have bad days. Toxic positivity is a thing, and I would rather be honest with you. There's a little bit of honestly negativity towards toxic positivity, but I would rather you people be toxically positive until they get to the point where they can accept the anger and they can accept the sadness and they can accept all of those other things that are coming through. Because I don't know who I saw this the other day, and I don't know who it was, but basically somebody said your emotions are guiding you towards your healing. Whether it's good, whether you're happy, or whether you're sad, or whether you're angry. Like in setting up this podcast today, I got a little bit frustrated. And I just looked at myself like, why are you frustrated? You get to talk to this amazing woman. What's what's that really about? So I kind of did the movie thing. Like, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden it shifted. Like it was gone because I just looked at it. 'Cause That's why, and I'm going to preach here just for a second, but I don't like the word demons because people that gives them so much power to give, because words for me are spells. They
Yes.
are quote unquote witchcraft on your soul. So don't use the word demons. Yeah, do you have challenges? Yeah, absolutely. We all
Mhm.
do. And we're going to have those days. And that's what makes you a beautiful human being, because you see that and you go, I know that that's going to happen. So I'm grateful that I'm angry right now. And I got to learn how to do that, because that right now I just said that and I'm like, my, I, you ever been in love?
Yes.
You know that tummy flip you get when you're in love?
Yes.
I just had that just by saying that out loud, Leah.
Oh,
So
wow.
thank you.
Yes,
That's
of
a
course.
gift you just gave me.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so
Wow.
happy to help in some way. It's really hard to do sometimes because we resist feeling bad. And I mean, I do it still, of course, because I don't like, I get a little triggered when I feel depressed because it brings me back to those 2 years and I get scared. And then I start going, okay, it's not going to be like that again. And I do that even if it's just for a day. And I have to lean into it and just, okay, what's going on here? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? And usually something will come up in my mind that I need to like heal or release, or something that I hadn't been taken care of. And it's usually something on my part where I need to take action. And if I can address it immediately, then it doesn't last as long, if that makes sense. And it's kind of the same with anger, but with anger, at least for me, it's a moving energy. So I can appreciate it a little more, because usually anger is getting me to act on something, or even if it's acting on like standing up for myself or something, that I'm angry with someone. Why are they triggering me? And then I'm able to kind of view it that way a little bit.
I like that. And my brain went to, you got anger, find a creative outlet. Like if you've ever seen the movie Pollock, which was ridiculously good, he just throws that paint on the canvas and it's almost an act of anger.
Yes.
But then it comes out with this beautiful, I've seen a Pollock. I was in Pittsburgh in 2003 in Andy Warhol Museum there, and they had this giant wall-sized one, and I just felt so much energy from that painting. But when you look at it, it's not, you know, a scene at the farm with, a cherry tree. It's all these paints mixed together, but you feel the energy of what he put into that. And I think
Hmm.
anger, doing some sort of creative outlet, whether it's bullet journaling or whether it's meditation by journaling or whether it's meditating or whether it's literally taking that anger out to lunch and going, "Hey, let's talk to your anger like it's not a part of you," and working through it. 'Cause I have to learn how to do that. 'Cause what I'm impressed by just by talking to you is you're not perfect at letting it flow, but that's kind of your default mode, is trying to let things flow, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Is that
Right.
true?
Yes, absolutely.
And how
Yes.
does that affect your personal life? I don't even know what you do for a living, and I don't want to know because that's not important to me. What's a, but how do you manage that with trying to be an adult? Because I always say adulting is self-care. You got
It
to pay
is.
your bills. You got to pay the roof over your head for the roof over your head and all of that. How do you manage all of this while maintaining a life?
I just try to think that, we still have to function, if you want to call it in 3D, and we still have to take care of the things that are immediately in front of us and to the best of our ability. Of course, I still have, hard days. Like laundry is a big issue for me. Like the mundane tasks are still pretty hard. I mean, that was one thing that I guess medication does help you with, because you can, for some reason, it gives you energy, to do those tasks that you don't want to do, but you kind of become like a workhorse for either your job or for, tasks at home. It kind of shuts off the other stuff, so sometimes it's difficult to always be in the flow, but it's working on that resistance and just allowing what's coming through. Like, why don't I want to do this right now? Is it something that, like, because my body needs rest, or is it actually just me being lazy? And if it's just me being lazy, will it be to my benefit to go ahead and do the task later on? Or, is there a reason, or do I need to be doing something else? Is that why I don't want to do it? So I
Yeah,
try.
but
Oh,
you
but
actually allow yourself to ask all of those questions. You're questioning it. That's just a message of hope too for everybody. You're an ADHD recovery coach. Period. End of story. Have a nice day, everybody. Because
well,
I
I'd love
like
to
that.
hear that. I really appreciate you saying that.
Well, one of my thing, one of my gifts is I am an idea generator. I can take something and fracture it and just put it out there. Like my business partner, I'm like, sent a potential client her way, and I'm like, and then she just like starts breaking it down. I'm like, she's like, dude, you need to start doing this. Like, and it wasn't even something in her silos of what we're working on, because we're working on uh something bigger than a bread box, and like this would be really a good outlet for you, because she just broke down somebody's social media profile and thought, this no, I don't know what and she broke it down on a Monday morning while she's at work, not doing the job that she's doing with me. So I'm an idea generator and I'm good at it. And
Mhm.
so, but I'm also good at it for me, because I have pivoted so many times. It's not even funny. And I had a friend of mine go, wow, you take a lot of risks in your life. I'm like, yeah, I do. Because I've been a computer programmer for 25 years. I was a filmmaker for 10. I've changed my life coaching brand 4 or 5 different times to kind of almost now pivoting to be just a tarot reader and an idea generator, and maybe on the side be a coach. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you're really good at it too. I mean, the way you speak as well, it's a gift, because
Yeah, I
you're
had a friend of
yeah.
mine tell me that my words when I go live on TikTok, I'm calming. Like, oh,
You are. When I
okay.
see your videos, you feel instantly kind of calm, and you always just kind of say you always have like the right message to say. That is a gift.
Well, in the middle of this, I words were coming out of my mouth and I didn't even know what I was about to say, to be honest with you. I felt that
Yeah.
I can't remember what, but I did, and I'm learning to accept those gifts, because
Yes.
it's not easy, because like
It's
I'm
not.
still trying to pivot to my new self, and one of the things that is uncomfortable for me, and let's dive into this, because honestly, I want you to kind of coach me a little bit and tell me, you've gone to change you started with changing your diet, you kept on the meds, but then you finally got off the meds, and you talk a lot about sobriety. So let's talk about that. Is that sobriety from, say, alcohol, or is that sobriety from society, sobriety from Adderall? What's sobriety mean to you for your personal journey?
So sobriety to me is alcohol, but really, so Adderall was like my main addiction, and it was I call it like my house of cards. I don't know. I think I've done a
Hmm.
video on this, been on a live, but it's basically what was holding all of my other addictions together, and that includes caffeine and and alcohol. And I didn't perceive myself as like an alcoholic because I could stop drinking, but anytime anything bad happened, I was usually drinking. Or anytime I was like picking fights in my relationship, I was usually drinking. So I started realizing that drinking was wreaking havoc really and was causing a lot of issues. So, but once I quit Adderall, when I was in that depressive state at that whole year, because I didn't quit drinking until after almost a year after quitting Adderall. So, but every time I drank, it would push me into like a horrible depression for like weeks, like deeper than I already was in. So finally was like, I'm not drinking ever again once. And that was December 7th, 2019. And that's when I discovered that drinking really exacerbates my ADHD. So
Oh,
I didn't realize that until getting sober. So I knew my hangovers were terrible and things like that, but I didn't realize that the anxiety you feel, like everything, I was getting like maybe one day a week of feeling good after drinking all weekend because I would be hungover for 3 or 4 days, but my ADHD symptoms would be crazy, which would make me want Adderall. So it was always, that's why I say it's my house of cards, because the Adderall was making me want to drink. And then I would want to take an Adderall to feel better the next day so you could function. So it was like this terrible cycle. But once I quit Adderall, then I could focus on everything else. I could focus on the alcohol, and that's what then finally see. It's like, it's weird. You have blinders on when you're in it. Like I never thought that I was addicted to any of these things, first of all. I'll just say that. But I could finally see where it was really disrupting my life once I pulled the Adderall away, if that makes sense. And then sobriety became like a new learning process because it's interesting when I quit alcohol, even though I was a big weekend drinker, that's always when I would feel like the withdrawal symptoms and craving alcohol was the weekends. I would get a break Monday through Wednesday, and then once Thursday hit, I'd be thinking about wine. And it's so weird how our body can become addicted just on certain days of the week, which I never knew until I quit. So what we know about addiction is so far off from what addiction truly is, I feel.
and what's fascinating about this, and I'm honestly probably going to cut that clip from that because you said the word focus. When you stopped it, it helped. Yeah. You used the word focus in a way that basically said, once I left it, I got to focus. And I thought that was a fascinating turn of phrase because you would think Adderall helps you focus. No, it doesn't. When you got off of it, you and the drinking, you were able to focus, which is opposite of what society is programmed to tell you, right? In 3D, that's what they think. Well, yeah, you got Adderall. Now you can focus. And now you can do like the Pomodoro effect and do your 5 things, whatever. But really, you left it because it helped you focus better.
Right. Yes, I did. But also, and it's kind of weird because the medication did help the first several years. The first several, I don't know exactly when it started being bad, like started changing the way it was. I think it changes everything about you. I think it changes your personality. I think it changes your chemistry, the chemicals, everything. And they know that it creates an imbalance over time. But in the beginning, this is why it tricks you because even alcohol does, it makes you feel more focused. And a lot of ADHD people who aren't on medication will pick up alcohol because there is some sort of chemical that calms your brain down. And it does the same effect almost like Adderall for some people with ADHD.
That's a wow. Okay, you're just blowing me away. But my brain is just cataloging this in my head. I don't really like. I'm speechless after that one. That's hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored.
Well,
It,
it makes me think is because did you have a struggle? Like right now, I'm in the middle of almost a battle between my current self and my future self, and I always believe that my future self, I want the things I want because my future self already has them. But in that middle of that 2 years, did you feel like you were battling your future self? I'm asking
absolutely.
this just for me because I
Yeah,
want to
I
know.
Yeah, I absolutely felt like I was battling my future self. I wasn't ready to step into who I am now. I perceived the person that I am now, which I'm so much happier now, but 5 years ago, like 6 months before I quit, if you would have told me this is who I would become, I would have laughed. I would have been like, that sounds so boring. That sounds not just because of the no substances, but I mean, my early morning routine, everything that I do that is really made me who I am right now and made me happier than ever, I perceived as boring, back then because my life was just chaos and I somehow was thriving in it. Or I perceived myself to be thriving in it or having fun, or just I was spontaneous and I just like to go do whatever I wanted to do at the time, and without a lot of structure, but I was also simultaneously miserable. So
See, I'm in a lot of those things I am now. I'm not miserable because honestly, I've had money, I've made a lot of money, I've whatever, but I'm honestly happier now with so much more less because less is more, obviously, but I'm not miserable. But some of those things you said are what I am now because I'm still in that little point of I'm still scared to let my old self go because my old self loves sports, my old self loves TV and music and all of these things, and I'm worried if I have to by gaining my new self, am I gonna have to give all those up? Like I love my wine and my wine is it's a thing for me. I just truly enjoy it. But like I've done sobriety kick where I've gone 6 to 8 months, just like, all right,
mhm.
I'm done. And but yet, yeah. So that's why I asked that question because that's where I'm at. And that's full transparency for my listeners. That's where I'm at. And I'm happy that I'm where I'm at because what you have embraced as yourself, Leah, is everything's happened for you, not to you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's what helped me, and I loved wine as well. That was the hardest thing. When I first got sober, I would drink water out of wine glasses or like sparkling water. And I would just always have to have that wine in my like wine glass in my hand. It helped with the transition. But I went through phases too. Like when I hit 2 years of sobriety, I was like, why am I really doing this? It's not like it's that big of a deal, and then I somehow made it through that. And now I'm at 3.5 years and I'm on the upswing again, but it's always going up and down. There's always like little moments where I'm like, what's the big deal? And doing the TikToks about sobriety really helps me stay sober too, because it's like my own personal accountability in a way. Um, but it's all everyone, it's so personal to everyone. So there's no, maybe even it's not in your journey to have to quit that. Only you know that. And
Correct.
because I know tons of people who, still drink and are still very spiritual and have stepped into their new selves, but only,
Yeah.
it's all up to our own like personal journey.
So I'm going to ask you a really deep question because I'm there. If you look at the outside world and all of the stuff that's going on, and a lot of even people's social media, they're out there, they see a divisive world, but I'm just starting to create this harmonious world in my head because I had this guy on my TikTok and I asked him, do he think thoughts or do he receive thoughts? And it's a very powerful question. But I'm just trying to receive thoughts. He says we call them into being, which I really
Hmm.
love. That's kind of
Yeah.
fascinating to me. But I'm calling into being these thoughts that where there's this harmonious world that's not perfect. It's not utopia, but it's also really harmonious. So when I see that divisiveness outside of me, I'm like, no, that's their world. How do you look at it? Because that's kind of a 3D, 4D, 5D kind of look. Or am I off base?
No, I look at it the same way because it's like we have to find a way to create the harmonious world while simultaneously living in what we perceive as a not harmonious world with everyone around us stressing and fighting and wars and the whole thing. But there's like, in some ways, it's like, what can we do now to try to step into the harmonious world? And all we can do is change ourselves. And that's, I feel like it's really difficult sometimes when you see all the pain and suffering going on in the world to feel like that it's okay to step into that, into the happy part, if that makes sense.
Yeah, giving yourself permission for me, is giving yourself permission to step into that visualization of the world. Because to me, like my friend Abby, who's the quantum jumping coach, talking about really feeling that, like Abraham Hicks talks about, you got to manifest a feeling before you're going to manifest a thing.
Right.
And I have done a lot of work on that. So whatever you want to manifest, manifest that feeling. Like, I'm, knock on wood, I may be picking up my car today, and it's not any car to write home about. I'm not buying a car off the dealer lot, but it's buying a car.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to manifest that. I haven't had a car since December 2017.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I've managed, mind you.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of angels along the way, but I stepped into that feeling of what it felt like. And I kept writing. One of my friends who's a coach said, write down 25 reasons why that car is going to be great in your life. And I did. And I wrote down, by the 25th one, I felt like I had the car already. And that's what you have to do. So I'm stepping into that feeling of this harmonious world. Yes, it's still going to have contrast, because as humans, there's always going to be contrast, because we all have a different double helix. So it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. There's still going to be some contrast. There's still going to be bullies. There always will be bullies, and there will always be problems. But the
Yes.
harmonious part is how we solve them.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to step into in my own little head pretty much every day, as much as I can, you know, to step into that. And it seems like you're doing that as well.
Yes, but also in the same sense, just like we can't like ignore our pain, I feel like there's like a part of us that can't completely ignore, what's going on. And like when we're ready to take action, we might be called to take action on it down the road, but we'll be doing it from a much stronger place, because we're creating expansion by being able to change how we feel and like draw strength from it, versus falling into it and giving into the fear and the worry and all of that comes along with becoming obsessed with what's going on the news and everything, if that makes sense.
Makes a whole lot of sense, because fear is driven by the ego. And I personally believe the ego was created by in the beginning to protect us. So once you understand that the ego uses fear and things, they're literally just like you have this overly protective mother basically inside you,
Mm-hmm.
protecting you. And sometimes it generates fear because you know, the unknown. Like, I'm going to pick up this car, and there's just like that little bit, and I'm just going, ego, it's going to be okay.
Right.
Waited this long, it's going to be fine. I got you. Thank you. And as you say, you go to gratitude, and that's probably one of the best things you said on this podcast, is that no matter what you feel, you're grateful for it. Because once you be great, it reduces its power. Because the more you give it power, you call it a demon or you call it whatever, you're giving it more power than it really deserves.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also still looking at it, and you're not being putting your head in the sand, but you're actually just looking at it and going, yeah, these divisive things. They are going on in the world. I see them, I feel it, but that's not me. I'm not sure how to go about that, but I like that perspective that you just gave.
Yes. Well, I mean, and I liked yours as well, because you're right. I mean, what you're saying is we just have to live simultaneously while somehow trying to create expansion. And I do a lot of quantum jumping as well. And I think that's awesome that you got a car. It's like huge, from writing everything down. I mean, that's just, I really think we do have the ability when we feel into it. And I do with the quantum jumping, like I feel like that's the best way to feel into it and create what we're hoping the world will become while living in where it is now.
Yeah, like I have wild concepts, and I believe that there, multiple universes, multiple timelines, and all of that. But I think it's all on an emotional level, not on a physical level. Like when the 3D people think, oh, there's another Earth. Well, no, you can shift that, and where everything is beautiful. Because Like, I live in a trailer, and if you haven't seen one of my pin videos, I live in a trailer, but I can visualize this vacant lot outside of me with a nice lush green lawn and all of that
Yeah,
because I
exactly.
believe that that world exists.
Mhm.
For
Absolutely.
for sure, I know it exists. So I just step into the feeling, and someday that's going to manifest. And I believe I can manifest a car in my driveway. So
I, yeah, absolutely you can. And I believe that too. I believe it's all on an emotional level. And it's like we can tap into any of these dimensions or timelines at any given time and draw in the energy from it in order to create in this timeline.
I agreed. And what you said also helped me as well. You're like, yeah, you could see it. You can see the divisiveness, and then just call into that good feeling, that harmonious feeling, and then for me, spirit will guide you if you need to take action.
Right.
And I love that. This has
Yeah.
been wonderful, and I know you got to run soon, but wow,
Yes, I
as
loved it. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk with
well,
you.
I wanted you to be able to tell your story, and here what I think is fascinating about you is the ADHD recovery. I think more people need to know your story, and I think that's a given, but I also know that you're incredibly talented, and I think that your creative side is wonderful too, because I do like your TikToks. You do a good job of doing that, and I think keep doing that. And if, as you said, find that future self, and then when you're called into action, if maybe being an ADHD recovery coach, whatever, you'll be called into action to do it.
Yes. No, I agree. I appreciate that. And I've loved being on today.
It's good because what helps with anybody being on my podcast, it helps them tell their story, but it also that's a refine basically it's putting it through a refinery and refining the story for them because they're going to walk away hopefully A, feeling better about themselves, and B, understanding themselves a little more, and C, helping the host, myself, learn something new about myself. That's those three goals of my podcast.
I love it. Well, you're great, and you taught me some new things as well. So I appreciate it
Yeah,
so much.
and um, let's wrap this up, Leah. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on my TikTok. It's healingcode333.
Why did you decide that? Why code 333 before we let you go?
Well, so I actually was going to do a different name, and then at the last minute, this healing code just came into my mind, and then I see numbers all the time. That could be a whole nother episode. I love
Yes,
numbers. I've seen them my whole life, but 333 for whatever that day was just I'd been seeing it a lot, and I just used that. But it's also
that
the
is
number of completion and 369. There's just so much within 333. So I don't know, it felt right, and for some reason I just stuck with it.
well, I'm glad because it's easy for me to remember, and that's a lot of people think, well, gosh, I got dementia because I can't remember people's user IDs. Well, no, you don't, because there's so many social media platforms, so many
So,
different IDs, you know. So keep that up. Keep up the great work on your TikToks. And I am so blessed to have you on my podcast. So blessed to even talk to you. So thank you, Leah, and I appreciate you. Appreciate
well,
your
thank
time
you, and I
too.
appreciate you too. Thank you so much.
You have a great day, and we'll talk later.
All right, you too. Thank you.